The Nightingale and the Rose is a short story by Oscar Wilde, published in 1888, in the short story collection titled The Happy Prince and Other Tales. From a third-person omniscient narrative perspective, this fairy tale is a satire on romantic love and materialism. Do like and subscribe. The Nightingale and the Rose begins in a garden with the cries of a young student who is in love with the professor's daughter. She promised to dance with him if he brought her red roses, but in his garden, there is no red rose. The Nightingale overhears this true lover bemoaning his unrequited love and empathizes with his plight, recognizing the rarity and sincerity of true love. Although both the student and his beloved will attend a ball hosted by a prince the following night, she insists on a red rose as a condition for dancing with him. A lizard, butterfly, and Daisy think the student is making a fuss over nothing. But the Nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow. So, she tries to help by asking various rose trees for a red rose in exchange for a song. But none of them have red roses available, only white or yellow ones. Finally, the Nightingale finds a rose tree under the student's window that has red roses, but sadly, the tree is incapable of producing any due to the winter's freeze rendering its branches dormant. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. The Nightingale inquires if there's a way to obtain a red rose for the student. The tree explains that the only method is for the Nightingale to sing under the moonlight while letting a thorn prick her heart, allowing her blood to flow to the tree and create a red rose. Despite the risk to her life, Nightingale agrees, valuing love above all else. Yet love is better than life, and what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man? When she informs the student of her plan, he fails to comprehend, being confined to bookish knowledge. However, the oak tree, where the Nightingale resides, understands her intent and requests a final song. Although the Nightingale sings with all her heart, the student, preoccupied with practicality in his notebook, remains unimpressed. That night, as she sings of love, the thorn pierces her heart, leading to her demise as a red rose is formed. The following morning, the student finds the red rose outside his window, attributing the red rose to a wonderful piece of luck. He plucks the red rose and presents it to his sweetheart, who was winding blue silk on a reel. The professor's daughter favors jewels from another suitor with whom she will dance at the ball. "I am afraid it will not go with my dress," she answered, "and, besides, the chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels, and everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers." Angered by her ungratefulness, the student threw the rose into the street, where it fell into the gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. "What a silly thing love is," said the student as he walked away. "It is not half as useful as logic, for it does not prove anything, and it is always telling one of things that are not going to happen, and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it is quite unpractical, and, as in this age to be practical is everything, I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics." The tale ends with the student opening a great dusty book and reading it. Let's analyze The Nightingale and the Rose. The Nightingale and the Rose draws inspiration from European folklore and fairy tales, particularly Hans Christian Andersen's The Nightingale, published in 1843, exploring the themes of nature and art. Similarly, in Wilde's story, the rose symbolizes artistry, requiring the nightingale's song, the moonlight's power, and the bird's sacrifice to come to fruition. Both tales feature a nightingale as the protagonist. In Andersen's story, the nightingale saves the imperial court of China and is ultimately revered and valued. This contrasts sharply with Wilde's Nightingale, who is overlooked and unappreciated by the characters. Andersen's sentimentality contrasts with Wilde's cynicism, obvious in the treatment of the nightingale and the results of their sacrifices. While both stories explore human fickleness, Andersen's tale concludes with the bird's vindication and appreciation. In contrast, Wilde's Nightingale finds solace in dying for the creation of art despite the lack of recognition. In The Nightingale and the Rose, Wilde manipulates traditional fairy tale elements, such as a hero, a romantic interest, and an aid, to challenge common character archetypes. The student is portrayed as unromantic and insensitive, while the girl is depicted as fickle and greedy. Initially, the red rose symbolizes romance and true love of the student for the girl, emphasized by the nightingale's sacrifice to produce it from her own heart's blood. However, the story ends with irony as the girl rejects the rose and the student's proposal, opting for material wealth instead. This contrasts sharply with Nightingale's unwavering belief in love, demonstrated through her ultimate sacrifice. Surely love is a wonderful thing. It is more precious than emeralds, and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set forth in the marketplace. It may not be purchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. Despite the student's declared love for the girl, he takes no action to obtain the rose himself, leaving the nightingale to labor on his behalf. Wilde suggests that true love necessitates selflessness, exemplified by Nightingale's self-sacrifice. The student's self-centered reaction to the girl's rejection and her materialistic choice of a wealthier suitor indicates Wilde's commentary on the shallowness of fickle lovers. The student, rejected, calls love a silly thing and unpractical. Ultimately, the nightingale stands as the sole symbol of genuine, deep affection in a world consumed by superficiality and self-interest. Oscar Wilde is famously linked with Aestheticism, a movement in the late 19th century advocating for art's sake, emphasizing beauty as the primary purpose of art. In The Nightingale and the Rose, the nightingale and the student represent opposing viewpoints for this argument. The nightingale, apart from her altruism, is characterized by her exquisite voice, used mainly to bring joy to others. Her songs, while abstract, explore ideals of love rather than depicting real-life scenarios. While the student believes art should have practical utility, criticizes Nightingale's song as pointless and self-serving. Yet, Wilde subtly satirizes the student's perspective, revealing his shallow understanding of love and art. The rejection of the rose by the girl and the student's lack of appreciation for Nightingale's sacrifice challenge the practicality of art. Yet, Wilde ultimately suggests that art's value lies in its ability to embody ideals and inspire selflessness, as exemplified by the nightingale's ultimate sacrifice. The Nightingale and the Rose initially presents the student as vocal about his affection for the girl, but it soon reveals his comfort lies more in academic pursuits than emotional depth. When the nightingale sings, the student's response is analytical and devoid of empathy, leading him to misinterpret the bird's sincerity. In fact, she is like most artists, she is all style, without any sincerity. What a pity it is that they do not mean anything, or do any practical good. Ironically, the student lacks emotional richness, his intellect clouding his perception of reality. His rigid rationality aligns with the girl's materialism, revealing a link between intellectualism and materialism, as she states, "The Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels. And everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers." Despite their rational justifications, Wilde implies their worldviews are flawed, as evidenced by their misinterpretation of symbols like the rose and the nightingale's song. The story ends with the student rejecting love as quite unpractical, opting for logic, philosophy, and study metaphysics in a great dusty book. The intertwining materialism of the characters, including the professor's daughter and the chamberlain's nephew, further highlights their inability to appreciate true love over material possessions. Ultimately, the rejection of love and the destruction of the rose highlight their superficial values, leaving the student disillusioned with the notion of love and intellectual pursuits. Hope you like, share, and subscribe for more videos.